Although the Eight of Swords appears to be about being trapped, stuck, or powerless, it actually contains a positive message about freeing ourselves from difficult situations. Please join me to learn how to handle this depressing-looking card when it shows up in a reading. Hi everybody, I'm Sue Ellen Clayton. Welcome to my channel where we'll be learning the tarot deck one card at a time. Today's video is about the Eight of Swords. This video will begin with a short description of the card. Next, I'll briefly explain what the card means when it appears in a reading. Then we'll talk about what each element symbolizes and what the card means when it shows up in both the upright and reversed position in a reading. I'll share some examples from my life so you can relate to the card in a real-world situation. And stay tuned until the end and I'll give you several questions to help you connect with the card. I will be using the Rider-Waite Tarot in this video. You'll find the link to the deck below, as well as to the many books that I've used in my research. So let's get started. In the Eight of Swords, we see a blindfolded, bound woman surrounded by 8 blue and white upright swords with their tips planted on the ground. She is wearing a dress that is red and orange and pale brown shoes. She has white bindings around her forehead and wrapped around her body. She is standing on uneven land in what looks to be a combination of water and mud. In the background, we see a large gray stone castle on a hill. The sky is gray. When this card appears in a reading, it means that you feel trapped, stuck, or powerless, yet you actually have more options than you think. Although it looks like this lady is blindfolded and bound, the restraints are very loose and she could get free if she wanted to. The same thing is true with the swords. Although it looks like they are encircling her, there is actually a large area in front of her that she could just walk through and escape. This card tells us that powerlessness is often in our own mind and not determined by our circumstances. In other words, when we feel powerless, we need to change our mindset and figure out what we can realistically do to get free from the situation. So let's talk about the symbolism in this card. We see a blindfolded, bound woman surrounded by 8 blue and white upright swords with their tips planted in the ground. Most of the sword is a cold blue color, which represents that it is about cold yet unyielding facts. The white portion of the sword represents purity and purification. Note that the swords only go partway around her. There is a clear opening that she could walk right through. Once again, Pam Richards, in her book Understanding Tarot, has pointed out that the swords are shown in groups. I'll put up images of the cards so that you can see them. In the foreground at the left, we have a grouping of 1. Above that, we have a grouping of 2. And to the right of the card, we have a grouping of 5. So here's what they mean. The single sword shows that she has the reality and truth of the ace in front of her. She's standing between a group of 2 and a group of 5. This means that she's standing between failure, as shown by the 5s, and is avoiding making a decision, as shown by the 2s. She has white bindings around her forehead and wrapped around her body. White is about illumination and purity, so I believe that the bindings are there to teach her something. The binding on her forehead covers her third eye, which means that she doesn't have access to her intuition. It may also keep her from seeing the truth. She is wearing a dress that is red and orange. The red and orange colors indicate passion, but her bindings are keeping her from experiencing that passion. I can think of so many examples from my life of being passionate and then being told not to be. I was discussing this with a friend at one point, and her mother used to tell her, "Don't break your hand patting yourself on the back." I think that sums up how many of us were raised to keep our excitement in check and not stand out in the crowd. Anyway, her pale brown shoes show that she is grounded and aware of what is happening. We see a large stone castle in the background. Castles represent success, and as a home, it would represent safety. While it appears to be close by, it is also up a hill, so it would be hard to reach. This means that she doesn't believe she can be successful, nor does she have access to a safe place. Those beliefs would definitely increase her sense of isolation. She is standing on uneven land in what looks to be a combination of water and mud. This may indicate low tide, so she would theoretically be in danger as the tide rises. The lack of water can indicate that she doesn't have access to her emotions. The uneven land shows that she's unsure of her footings. Several authors, including Rachel Pollack in her book New Tarot, Master the Meanings of the Cards, said that this card may be based on a Masonic initiation in which the seeker of spiritual wisdom must first undergo sacrifice and ordeals, where they may feel stranded in the darkness and surrounded by perils. This may be a test of ingenuity, trust, and faith. Rachel Pollack writes that, according to Walden Ruth Ann Amberstone, the number of coils of rope around her matched the directions for the Masonic ritual of initiation. Her helplessness might be voluntary as she seeks to go inward, away from outer consciousness, to an inner revelation. I tried to research these initiation rituals and couldn't find any information to confirm this theory. However, Rachel Pollack, as well as the Amberstones, are far more knowledgeable about tarot than I am. If they think that this symbolizes a Masonic ritual, I believe them. The sky and castle are gray. This represents sadness and neutrality. When the Eight of Swords appears in an upright position, it can symbolize that you are feeling persecuted, powerless, oppressed, or victimized. It can mean that you feel trapped. This could be physically trapped, but more likely, it means that you are feeling emotionally trapped by a circumstance, such as a lousy job that you need to keep so that you can have health insurance or pay the mortgage. It can mean that you feel isolated, ignored, or like you don't fit in, that you have some kind of illness or injury that keeps you restrained. Perhaps you're pregnant and your doctor has put you on bed rest, that you are blind to your options. You actually have choices, you just don't see them, that you are feeling confused, you have no idea what to do next, that you are avoiding responsibility, that you are in a self-imposed prison. You are too afraid to make the next move, or you don't want to do the hard work needed to break free. It can mean that you are waiting to be rescued. And finally, it can mean that you have a legal problem or are literally in prison. Here's an example from my life about the Eight of Swords when it is in an upright position. I read this on Facebook one day. It's one of those rare posts that has stuck with me, but I have no idea who wrote it. It's about being in a self-imposed prison. The story is about a woman who had a physical illness. She experienced extreme pain that limited what she could do, so she was essentially in prison due to her body. She was also very depressed. She was talking to her therapist about all the things that were keeping her stuck, and he asked for an example. She said that the dishes had piled up because they needed to be pre-washed, as there was food stuck to them, so the dishwasher wouldn't get them clean. However, she couldn't do the pre-washing because she was in too much pain. The therapist said, "Then put them in the dishwasher and run the dishwasher twice." And she said, "You can't do that." And he challenged her, "Well, why not?" And she didn't have an answer. She ended up running the dishwasher 3 times. The dishes came out sparkling clean, and it taught her not to be stuck with self-imposed rules. I love this example because it shows that there are ways out of our self-imposed prisons, even though we don't think there is a way to escape. When the Eight of Swords appears in a reversed position, it can have a similar meaning to the upright card, but it is also accompanied by strong emotions that make things worse. To use an earlier example, let's say that your doctor has put you on bed rest during your pregnancy. That's already difficult enough, but then you start blaming yourself for causing the problem because you ate too much French fries and ice cream, examples I chose because I lived on these foods when I was pregnant, instead of forcing yourself to eat healthier foods. So not only are you miserable because you're on bed rest, You've added a big dose of shame and blame to the experience for something that may not even be true. Other meanings of the Eight of Swords in the reverse position include breaking through restraints so that you can experience feelings such as release, freedom, and liberation. It can mean that you take the first steps to get yourself out of a hard situation. For example, you feel trapped by a terrible work situation, so you start getting your resume together so you can apply for a new job. The Eight of Swords reverse can mean that you suddenly see a situation clearly. You realize that what you thought was true really wasn't. And finally, that you break through limiting beliefs that have kept you stuck. For instance, you are a woman who loves working with your hands and making furniture. You always wanted to be a carpenter, but your friends and family told you that nobody would take you seriously because you are a girl. And then one day you decide that is just ridiculous, and you're no longer going to accept that limiting belief. If an existing carpentry shop won't hire you, you'll set up your own shop, and you'll be darn good at it too. Here's an example of the reversed Eight of Swords from my life about breaking through limiting beliefs. I have a few gay male friends who grew up in religious homes and were taught that homosexuality was a sin and they were going to go to hell. I can't imagine the anguish of hiding your sexual orientation from your family and then, to make it worse, believing that God knew what was in your heart and you were going to be damned for all eternity. Somehow these men all realized that these beliefs were constructed by man and not God, and that they didn't need to accept that what they had been told were true. All of these guys are now happily married and seem to have broken through what was a prison. Here are some questions to help you connect with the Eight of Swords. Number 1, where in your life are you feeling stuck? Have you created a prison of your own making? Number 2, what beliefs do you need to let go of? Number 3, have you avoided taking action because you're waiting for someone to rescue you? Number 4, how can you regain your power and control over your life? Number 5, did you give up on something you were passionate about so that you could fit into the norms of society? And number 6, what is preventing you from seeing the truth? So I hope that this video has given you a good look into the Eight of Swords. And please join me for the next video, which is the Nine of Swords.